Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV, where we keep you abreast with the latest political developments in the country, as well as bring perspectives to issues around policy and governance. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for joining us. Now, on the program, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, has admitted that security agencies and the military constantly come under pressure to compromise during elections through various financial inducements. But he is urging Nigerians to anchor their trust in the military as they strive to maintain neutrality in accordance with the directives of President Muhammadu Buhari. He spoke on Thursday while briefing journalists at the State House in Abuja on the strides made by the military in the fight against insurgency, terrorism and banditry, stressing that personnel were being trained to follow the codified rules of engagement before, during and after the elections.
Over 300,000 persons have been rescued from the hands of abductors since 2016, while refugees who fled the northeast owing to the insurgency have started to return. These are facts that the Chief of Defense Staff is pushing out, and he should know, since he has been a theater commander in the troubled region at the head of the military's offensive against insurgents and terrorists.
Over 362 bandits have been neutralized, recovered over 156 AK-47 rifles, and a great number of cache of ammunition. And then, of course, we've been able to also strangulate the logistic supply route for the criminals, and of course averted several community clashes, restored socio-economic activities in the troubled areas, and arrested several criminal elements, including those who deal in drugs, as well as arms and ammunition.
The defense chief admits that there still exists internal sabotage within armed forces, but asserts that saboteurs have not succeeded in derailing the military and security agencies from their mission of protecting the sovereignty of the country. It is for this reason he debunks a recent allegation by an international news medium which accused the military of carrying out over 10,000 illegal abortions on female victims of the war in the Northeast.
What the allusions they made is news to me. It never occurred. I never saw anything like that, both from the detention center in Giwa project, down to Malaria Cantonment, where I lived, where we have 7 Div Hospital. That was our major hospital for the treatment of our personnel and their families, and especially the wounded. That again, we had unfettered access by all the members of the media.
Another issue generating debate is the role of the military in the 2023 elections. The CDS is firm in his belief that the armed forces will remain non-partisan.
The police, of course, is the lead in this, but we believe that we'll be at the periphery to give assistance as requested by INEC.
The CDS also revisited the alleged Lekki Tollgate massacre in 2020, insisting that the Nigerian military is not interested in killing its own people, but rather more concerned in protecting the citizens. This is why he is urging the media industry in Nigeria to keep the public informed with balanced coverage. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
Also, the Senate on Wednesday, 6 December, threatened to slash the allocations of about 100 government establishments comprising ministries, departments and agencies for failure to respond to queries raised against them in a report by the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. The President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, disclosed this after Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Matthew Oroinde, raised a point of order during plenary that agencies indicted in the audit report had refused to appear before his panel. Oroinde said his committee had invited heads of the affected agencies on several occasions to respond to the queries raised without feedback. Take a look.
Some time now, my committee has observed that in the management of public finance, to which of course we have been appointed to perform our role in ensuring transparency and accountability in spending public money, by way of this, anything that is appropriated by the Senate, of course, that borders on public funds, utilization of public funds, this committee has been mandated to look into it by inviting MDAs and persons that are charged with the responsibility of approving public funds for expenditure. The problem we had this problem. I have come to you, Mr. President, and today I have come to the floor of the Senate to say, in exercising our duties, we have been inviting agencies of government and accounting officers in these agencies or in the MDAs to come and let us know. Number one, the queries that have been raised from the Auditor General's reports. From 2015 to date, all the reports that have been sent to us, we have been having the problem. In fact, if you remember, Mr. President,
any public officer who accepts to serve and utilizes public fund appropriated by the National Assembly must be prepared to account before the National Assembly. And any officer who feels he or she is above the law should quit. Should quit.
All right, now to give perspectives to some of these issues, we have Dr. Farouk Bibi Farouk. He is a political economist and a lecturer at the University of Abuja in the studio, and also joined by the Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch, Omar Yakubu, and as well as Dr. Tanko Ahmed. He is a political analyst who joins us virtually from Jos. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming to Daily Politics.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Well, we'll begin with the more like the security issue, where we heard from the Chief of Defense Staff raising, well, not raising alarm rather, but kind of disclosing that the military and other security agencies are constantly under pressure to compromise the elections in 2023. And if you recall, we've had also from the Inspector General of Police where he said governors, he disclosed that governors are behind some of the violent attacks that we have seen in campaigns and the rest of them. So it looks like the security chiefs want to really come to equity with clean hands by disclosing some of these informations, and there seems to be a determination to ensure that the coming election is free and fair. What's your take on these revelations?
Okay, thank you for inviting me, even though, and for the recap about the worries of the security agencies. Firstly, it's actually not the responsibility of the Army, Navy, or Air Force to provide security within Nigerian space. It's not really their work. But somehow we have managed to bring them in to be solving civil matters that ordinarily should be the work of the police. And right now they're overstretched and overwhelmed in a terrain that they're actually not even supposed to operate. But be that as it may, going with its concerns, I feel that all this pressure is normal. During political season, you get to see desperation from politicians trying to maneuver, doing all sorts of things to ensure, because it's kind of a philosophy of a winner takes all. How the means does not matter. All they need to do, they just want to win. So this kind of pressure is normal. What I would think that needs to be done, I think I said in your studio maybe about a year ago, INEC should develop methodologies and ways and means to reduce this pressure on other agencies. Now, if they are adopted 3, 4, 5 years ago, adopted maximum use of technology, where you can give, for example, online voting, electronic voting, that reduces physical presence and reduces human intervention, you find out that there's no need to provide so much security and so much funds for our elections. Well, we have one of the most expensive elections in the world, even in dollar-based rates. So INEC has a responsibility because it's an action or inaction that causes these things. So my thinking is this will continue to go on. It's not going to wind down. Pressure will going to continue on every other stakeholder, not even on the security, on everybody. On governance itself, wait and see from January, a lot of things will slow down. Governance will cease
because of elections. So the pressure will be on everybody. But it's the responsibility of INEC, in my view, to come up with things using technology as I always opine to reduce that pressure on other stakeholders.
All right. Well, yes, there's going to be the use of technology in the 2023 general elections. However, we cannot totally take away the fact that we will still have presence of security agencies and other stakeholders that will be participating in the whole process. So safety is, of utmost priority here. But it doesn't look like some of the politicians are really willing and ready to see a free and fair election go. They say one thing and they do another thing when no one is watching, sometimes even when others are watching. Recently, a video went viral on social media of how a House of Reps member was, urging his supporters to deal with anyone who says he's not going to be voting for his political party and all of that. So how do we contain this, really, Dr. Farouk?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, about technology. As far as I'm concerned, technology will continue to make elections more expensive because we are acquiring gadgets that we don't own, we don't control, we don't know how to make, we don't know how to operate, we don't know how to maintain, and we pay for whatever they are costing without even due diligence. We don't know how much they are bought, and we don't know how to keep them for another.
Well, isn't it worth it?
Well, it could be worth it for a period of time. That makes it more expensive because the cheaper, the more integrity there is in an election, the cheaper it would be. The more trust that people have in the process, the cheaper it could be. It's not about the instruments you put into the election. It's about the mind of the people, their understanding of what democracy is all about, and what they are about to do is choose a leadership. Now, if you go there with a sense of do or die, that brings in security, and that brings in the cost of bringing that security. If you go there with an effort to manipulate the system, then that brings in technology, that brings in the cost of technology. So the more you remove this and look at the behavior of the people, the more you reduce the cost of elections. So it's, for me, more of awareness about what democracies are. It's very difficult because our history is not that of that awareness. It's a history of determining elections by force of either security or determining it by force of either maneuvers or whatever it takes, including using of religion or ethnic group and ethnic politics and so on. So we have that as a bane in our democratic process, and it could continue to become more expensive as we go along. This present system from 1999 to date, there is a symbiotic relationship with the security and whoever is deciding elections. Those military men decided to bring this transition, and they decided to form the parties. They decided to finance the parties. They decided to choose candidates for the parties, and they instructed their boys in the barracks and the police to determine who becomes. We all know, and we have been choosing military leaders. And that is the mentality of the military leaders. It doesn't come to talk to you, or there is no oratory in it. It's just, so after they finish with the politicians, they call their boys from the barracks and tell them, decide this, this one should go, this one should not go. And this is how our politics has been.
All right, let's go to Dr. Tanko Ahmed. Now, can we really afford to say we wouldn't have militarization of the political process? Looking at the number, the size of our security architecture or our security system in the country, when it comes to a general election, there will be certainly need for us to deploy all the security agencies that we have. So can we really afford to say, oh, we don't want the military here, looking at even the crisis that we've been experiencing in different parts of the country?
Thank you very much for having me. I would not go ahead and repeat exactly what my other mentioned. Explain everything that is on the ground. I will talk about specifications. The military and all security agencies will go into the election process to perform specific duties that are assigned. If you are talking about the military, if they need to move items from one to the other, The Nigerian Air Force has the capability to move these items. That is a military function. If you come down on the road, maybe you want to make to move the airport to the INEC office and other things, other security agencies like the Civil Defense, Nigerian Police, road safety will do that. The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, now talking about the military, most of people talk about in this kind of sense. I think mostly it's interference in the work which the military has been invited to do. The military will not just leave the barracks and start working on election. They will not even leave the barracks and start fighting bandits. When you call the military to go out there to do their job, they will do it in a stand. I will give you an example with doctors. What about if you call in a doctor to look over, to see or people having accident, and the doctor says he wants to cut off the hand to save the life of the person? Can't interfere with what he does. So everything we are talking about the military, about the security agencies, all people start attacking the center, they committing gross interference in the work of the military and other security agencies. The same thing goes with any other person that is working for government. You do your job, you procedure, you draw the line. Anybody who crosses the line, you deal with them.
All right, so Omar Yakubu, what specific roles are we looking at here when we deploy security officials, to our polling units and polling centers? Because sometimes you see certain election malpractices going on, and it just seems as if the security officials look the other way. For instance, you have people doing vote buying, in the centers. You have party agents escorting voters to cubicles and the rest of them, certain malpractices. And it's as if the security officials just look the other way. So what are the expectations here for security officials to make sure that we have a free and fair election?
Well, I think that if you look at the process, the entire process is very complex and it's very expensive. One, in transporting election materials across 36 states is expensive. In all that, you need the security, and whether the military or the police to escort them. Most of the time, it's Air Force pilots that do that because of the sensitivity of the materials. From 36 states, you cascade down, all down way to the ward level. At each ward level, you are supposed to have security personnel. Now, naturally, they'll be overstretched because depending on whose data you take, we have less than 400,000 policemen. So even if you deploy all of them, you are never going to have enough. So maybe that's why the last speaker said you have to pull in civil defense, pull in the military, pull in all other agencies just to support to ensure that there's security at the polling booth. Now, imagine a scenario where we already have said that these politicians are desperate to win elections because the philosophy is just to win. You have 2 or 3 military or security personnel from different arms of the security forces. How effective can they really manage? Because they're actually overstretched. I think they're overstretched. Considering that these people want to win at all costs, even if it's to cause violence, but luckily the BVS machina has reduced that. So the accusation of vote buying and for them to prevent it is actually a difficult one. I don't think they are really fully involved. Yes, there are isolated cases and there have been reports of vote buying. They have been reported by the media and the civil society organization. That is very true. But the problem is what creates the avenue for the vote buying is the access. And I feel government now has done taken 1 or 2 measures to reduce the movement of cash, especially cash, in the next election. So that's a very brilliant, innovative move, and that reduces pressure on the system and definitely reduces pressure on the security agencies to ensure that we have free and fair elections in 2023.
All right. Dr. Farouk, there's also the issue of cutting of ballot boxes and all of that. That's also a concern. How do we tame that this time around? Even though we have, electronic transmission of results and everything, how will that help in making sure that we have a seamless process in 2023?
No, I think there will be very few people, few attempts to kidnap boxes or to carry boxes during these elections, because electronic transmission means that a copy of the result is already arriving at the destination, the collation centers, before the physical paper arrives. That physical paper will be photographed and sent electronically. It's a PDF. It has to be taken out too at the point of collation. It's not going automatically into a server and counting itself, you see. So probably we don't have that technology yet. By the next election, we might be looking to pay more money to get to a point where the moment you press your ballot, the number goes into the system, and so counting happens automatically. Now, counting happens through the extraction of these electronic transmitted results, photographed also as taken as PDF, and then put together at a collation, collated at a particular. So if you go after the ballot box and it doesn't arrive, a result has already arrived. If you change the result of the ballot box, a genuine result has already arrived with the signature of all the agents and the election monitoring officers, the electoral officers themselves.
But in the event that the counting has not been done yet, but at least 90% or 95% of the votes are being cast, and then perhaps the opposition or the person who feels he doesn't have, strength in a particular location decides to deploy talks to go and disrupt the whole process. To what extent would it affect, the credibility?
There would be attempts, definitely, but it is going to be more complex and more organized, because you have to know the numbers that are there. You have to know the process that has taken place before you go and waylay the ballot boxes or destroy the equipments. And so you might have to make election impossible. Instead of allowing elections or going to seize election materials, put in what you want and go and submit and it gets accepted, there is now a dual process. Now, unless you arrive at the counting center and make counting impossible, which could practically make the election impossible, you might not have that opportunity. But there will be attempts based on, when you look at it generally and globally, if it is like a gubernatorial, like you said, you might want to create certain problems in certain areas that might make the elections difficult. I think the equipment they have is once it hits a network, it will transmit. So you might maybe time, depending on the area, how long it would take to hit a network, and probably attack before then, or make something impossible so that certain results might not come. And while you collate, you might have to consider whether what that would affect the general result. If it doesn't have so much impact on the general result, you might have to accept that as cancelled votes and go along. There will be attempts because it is in the minds of the people.
Yes. All right. So, Dr. Tanko, let's have your take on this. There is this trend. I don't know whether to call it a new trend or maybe with this season it has now, intensified. And I'm talking about, intimidation and hate speech, even on social media, verbal attacks, and all of that. We've seen that recent times these things are becoming more and more obvious, and people are no longer feeling, that they shouldn't do that. People feel audacious enough to go any length to say whatever. And it doesn't look like we have control over this. How can we tame this?
Well, it's very easy to tame this. After all, we have defined this over and over again, that hate speech is not just a trend, it's a crime. If you go back to what laws are made in the first place, laws believe that laws are made to settle disputes. What kind of dispute? When one person harms the other. the prevalence of hate speech, because people have wrongly translated some aspect of freedom, and they think they can take their mouth on TV, on social media, and insult somebody. You see the kind of things they do. Particular people that also political parties are all using these people to intimidate others. And let me tell you one thing, if you don't even consider it as crime to deploy people that will be insulting other people, harm the process of making government itself. When you sound dirty and you influence the mind of the public negatively, some people are not even going out to vote. The less people vote, the lesser the legitimacy of government is. We are not saying that just because government is illegitimate in this manner, that the government will not be able to govern. It will be able to govern. But that is one of the problems, one of the challenges why government will come and say, do this, we will not do it.
Okay,
so
Dr.
if
Tanko,
we have this thing in form of a comprehensive approach, we should be able to stop it. And it is the responsibility of everybody. Okay,
Doctor, someone has to take responsibility. You know, when sometimes one would say responsibility of everybody, it becomes very ambiguous. We all know that these things are wrong. They are there in the laws.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's ignorance. People are aware. But the issue is that we don't seem to be taking action. We don't seem to be seeing agencies, you know, relevant to this, take action against people who are clearly seen to be spreading hate and, you know, disinformation and even attack on opponents. We don't see action on that. So perhaps that's why it has continued. Don't you think so?
The last part of your question is a little bit, but then I understand getting from the issue of responsibility. Responsibility starts with the person doing the responsibility by the hate speech is directed to. There is not, if there is no agency to stop somebody insulting me, you come to my house to insult me, I will at you. If you that no, nobody would be insulting everybody just around. So this responsibility is not just the issue of watch and catch. No. Okay. We should also educate the public. One of my colleagues here is mentioning issue of ignorance. Yes, we should educate the public. Like if hate speech is so prevalent, we should expect preachers in the mosque or church to say that people should not tolerate being insulted. If you do that, the person that is going to insult another person will think twice. And to some extent, we have to go this far. Otherwise, we are just taking government as if it is some kind of a magic. Government is no magic.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tanko Ahmed, political analyst, for joining us on Daybreak and sharing your perspectives on these issues. Thank you. All right. Let me come back to Umar Yakubu. Why does it seem so impossible to take action on some of these things? We have made provisions in the laws that this is wrong. You shouldn't do it. And we see some of these people that do this, some of them highly placed, some of them are lawmakers, some of them in the executive. They do this and they get away with it.
Well, I think we need to test the law. We have enough provisions. In fact, there's an element in Section 23G, if I'm correct, of the Terrorism Prevention Act. I'm not talking about other laws. Terrorism Prevention Act, where if you say something and to incite violence or harm to somebody or property is actually an act of terrorism. Well, of course, on conviction, it's either fine or you go to prison. But I think maybe because we have not decided to test the law, that's why, in a way, I must say this, the last episode about 2 weeks ago, where a senior citizen lady was insulted by somebody and she took the person to court, I actually wanted the law to be tested to see where it will end so that people will learn. Not because we wanted anybody jailed or not, but let people know that, look, it is illegal or legal, that's if the court does not convict the young man. But from the way it was going, it was likely a conviction based on some sections of the law, to test the law that you cannot just do anything, particularly to incite violence or harm or injury to another person.
Okay.
So I think we just need to test the law, and we'll see that freedom of speech has its own limitations.
Okay, quickly before we go on our break, Dr. Farouk, how do you see this impacting on the 2023 general elections? The rhetorics, the narratives, the intimidation, the verbal attacks. How do you see it affecting?
I think the laws are there. What is happening in a generic way is our insincerity. Suddenly, a government that has tolerated Kogi, that has encouraged Kanu in 2018, 2019, saw what happened in Oshun, that did not accept to present to us the Electoral Act when the president had a stick, is suddenly coming out to tell us that it is going to stop all of these things overnight. Most of the people talking are beneficiaries of those actions. We're lucky we don't have Kogi on the ballot this year. You would have seen, you have heard worse things. Kanu, we know what happened, and most of the talk is coming from Kanu. So why did we turn our faces and ignored the issues when we were supposed to have taken action? And suddenly it's the most important thing to do. You know, so we're not sincere. That's the honest thing. And the people committing these crimes know that there is no sincerity behind it. That at the end of the day, everybody in power wants to get what they want to achieve in retaining power. And so even if they commit these offenses and the results come in favor of what they want, everything will be ignored. So I think it has to be a general thing beyond government. We have to learn how to not tolerate these things. As people, we have to learn how to not really too much rely on the laws, but to, as people, make it a point that you can't come to us and do these things and present us in this manner by winning an election. So we could just refuse to go along with you if that is the attitude you have. You can't be a thug. No matter what happens, even if you're a governor or a legislator, right, if you behave like a thug, we treat you like a thug.
All right. Well, I hope that the people understand that.
It's a challenge.
The followership is a problem.
Yeah.
But we'll take a short breather now, and then when we return, we'll continue our discussions on the program. Join us again.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. If you are just joining, you're watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. You can do well by following the conversation across all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and also watch us live on YouTube. Now, moving on to other issues of the day, senators have expressed reservations over the new policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria on cash withdrawals. You recall that the Apex Bank, under the new withdrawal policy, restricted the maximum cash withdrawal over the counter by individuals and corporate organizations per week to 100,000 naira and 500,000 naira respectively. The Senate Minority Leader Philip Aduda had, during Wednesday's plenary, called for caution on the cash withdrawal limit, saying that the policy will affect the country's economy. Take a look.
Space on the issue of Central Bank of Nigeria issuing out some guidelines on limits of money withdrawal from the ATM, which they had pegged at 20,000 naira per day, withdrawal of 100,000 naira per week or per day, 500,000 for corporate organizations, and third-party checks of 50,000 over the counter cannot be paid. 200 million, well, but fantastic if it will require proper motion, but Mr. President, just to say that they rolled out lots of policies, and they rolled out, they said even to take money from the POS will be 20,000 naira, and that the denomination to be put in the POS was going to be 200 naira, and corporate organizations 500,000 naira, and then withdrawal of money to the tune of 5 million from about 600 branches with about 35-40 million customers. We'll have to go to the banking headquarters for approvals. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, our commerce, I don't think, is ready for this, and our economy might not take this shock.
And at the moment, I would advise, no, it's not going to be a debate on this at the moment. I would advise that these two deputy governors have been in the CBN for the last 4 or 5 years. So they are part of this system. They are not new people. When they come for screening, this is supposed to constitute a major, just hold on, please. Just hold on, please. Let me talk, please. This is supposed to constitute a major issue to be raised before them. You can come with a motion, but I want us to be properly informed and properly guided.
All right, there you have it. Briefings from the Senate earlier today. Their reactions to the central bank's policy on cash withdrawals. Well, let's get perspectives on this. Omar, I don't know, what's your take on this new policy by the central bank? A lot of applause for the CBN in some quarters, while others who are going to be impacted, like the mobile money agents, reacting to this. So what's your take?
Well, my thinking is, I think it's a brilliant policy to start with. But the only problem I have is the timing. I wish they had brought this policy when we had the heightened issues of banditry, kidnapping, and all those terrorism issues, because most of the kidnapping, they were demanding cash. And I recall we released a little report and an advisory that this should have been done like 2 years ago, because the bandits were collecting this money in cash. So the policy is good in 2 or 3 ways. One, financial inclusion. It in a way forces people to utilize banking services, which is good for the economy, is good for the data, and good for management. Another way is reduces government spending by reducing the cost of printing so much money. But why there's backlash now is probably because of the earlier question you asked, is political season. It's being seen as it's being targeted at politicians, which in a way has its own positives to to reduce the influence of monetary politics. So it's on an electoral campaign financing. So it has its own positives on both ways. But I think maybe what the CBN needs to do more is to communicate that this policy, the benefits on the economy, on the security, and there's so many benefits. Of course, Senator Aduda is right. Enough sensitization wasn't done. So there are going to be some backlashes and resistance. Our people in the village are not aware. Most people deal in cash. There are a lot of problems. These things take time. So what they could do, maybe increase the time frame, but because like I think the motive is political, that's why there's a lot of rush. But if they had done this 2-3 years ago and given time, like 2 years, by now would have been used to it. Yeah. Policy-wise is good, but the time frame is an issue.
All right. Yeah. Well, let me get your own perspectives, Dr. Farouk. What do you make of this, really?
Well, I do agree that the policy of cashless economy is good. It's working for a lot of countries, but we are not those countries yet. I am afraid it could be a disaster for fundamental reasons. You want to pursue an economic policy for political objectives. So you have already derailed. To put an economic policy in place, those incidences, tangibles, should not be your emphasis. And unfortunately, that is the emphasis we see in the body language of the president and the presidency. It's the CBN that is bringing out issues.
Is it really
that
political?
When the president came,
the advantages seem to be multidimensional. If you think about the security issues,
but having a cashless economy is first and foremost an economic policy, economic decision, and it is a very strategic thing. It's a very sensitive thing. Money is a coward. Where you harass it, it doesn't stay. It likes to go to where it is good, safe. So if you are going to change the manner in which you utilize your monies, you should not do it by ambushing those who are in it, because you have other objectives. You could achieve those objectives by putting in place the economic policy properly first. Like my colleague said, take the right time. If we had been doing this for the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, by today we would now be able to benefit from the fact that politicians will not have the money to use. But if
don't you think that if you give that much room, it will give opportunity for circumventing the process?
No.
That's another thing to consider.
I used to use checks. I hardly use checks now. I use my bank app or card. Nobody forced me. It's a process that you carry people gradually through. You see, today you are now telling anybody who does not have a wallet, which you cannot sustain, that he will have problem from January in doing certain transactions. Now, how many people are you counting? Because you want to target politicians, how many people do you think rely on buying 3, 4, 5?
But is it a bad thing? I mean, even targeting the politicians, is this such a bad thing?
But you
if you can curb vote buying through this means, I think it's
if you fail, imagine this policy failing and the impact on the economy. Because it could fail. Because people could not who do not know how to utilize wallets in their phones, would not have transactions. And you're talking about somebody who probably turns around $1 million every month or 2 months and has no business with any electronic system. Now, if he is not engaged and he loses that ability to turn about that $1 million, in the next 2 months, he's broke.
Perhaps it's an opportunity to drive financial inclusion at this point.
Yes,
it will now push people into doing that.
Inclusiveness is not by gulag system, by force, by putting deadlines. You understand? Inclusiveness is by enlightenment. People tend to, like for example, you start with certain areas. You don't buy petroleum with cash anymore. You don't go into a supermarket and use cash anymore. But there are places where if you go to buy a bag of beans, and the person who spent his time farming that bag of beans has no way of utilizing your electronic cash. He keeps his bags of beans, and there are people who rely on those bags of beans per week, per month to make their lives. And they run into millions. The monies they make run into millions, but they are rotating it because they are turning it over. So I think we should look at our economy very well.
Okay.
Now, the last thing. It seems it's a solo thing between the president and the central bank governor. Now, have we looked at other economic inputs or security inputs? Are we sure that our telecommunication, for example, can take this backbone, the backbone of our telecommunication, can suddenly take this? Have we spoken to NCC?
Okay, so we'll come back to that. Just hold your thoughts. Let's hear what Nigerians are also saying regarding this new policy by the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Point-of-sale operators also called on government to have a rethink on the policy, adding that youths in the country are predominantly using the POS as a means of livelihood.
So we now that is doing the POS is because we don't have any other thing to do. Now that we have this one to do, they want to snatch it away from us. And this bank that is giving us, maybe if I go to bank today, I will get like 400,000 or 300,000. We'll come back and sit down and manage it. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000. The money will be gathering. Maybe 100, before you know it, we get up to 5,000 a day or 4,000. But now with this kind of rule now, there is no way we can get even 2,000 or 1,500. So 1,500 will not buy me food, morning food and night food.
The way they want to do their thing, let them do. Let them not change our rules. Those things they are changing will affect us youth, to affect us and to make us change our mind. Otherwise, get other things done. So they should just leave the olden days rule. If they want to change the currency, let them change the currency only and leave our rules. We withdraw 20,000. That is not possible now. Like me, like this, a day I run 100,000 a day. So I'll just withdraw 20 and wait for another day. That is not good now. And it will not fasten our work.
Reactions continue to trail the CBN decision to limit cash withdrawals to 20,000 naira per day for individuals. Some Abuja residents called on government to reverse the new rules, which they attribute to the new redesignation of naira notes. They further said new rule will affect the economic activities of the country.
I actually feel it's so crazy because with the limitation of withdrawal, which is also 20,000, I think it's going to affect a lot of businesses, because you can't expect someone like, people that own businesses, like, withdraw money that is not up to 100,000 or much more than that, because some people, the moment they go out with that business, the amount of money they need in that business is much more than that which we are talking about.
To me, I feel that it's very strange. People will find it difficult to cope with that. But I just hope and pray that it will give us the ultimate benefit for what the federal government of CBN wants to achieve to ensure that the economy has a seamless flow of cash instead of stocking it in people's hands. And I believe that cash transfers are also good, much advantage of cash transfer. The disappointment there sometimes is that when you walk to ATM to transfer, sometimes they will tell you no cash. And you may be needing this money urgently to do certain things. So I also hope that they also improve on the other side of it.
The CBN, and in a letter addressed to banks and other financial institutions, announced new limits on cash withdrawals over the counter and via automated teller machines ATM.
All right, thank you for staying. Well, there you have it. Nigerians also giving their own views. We still have in the studio Dr. Bibi Farouk, a lecturer and political economist, and also Umar Yakubu, Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch, talking about the new policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria and how this could impact on the economy, on the country. Well, the concern, like you've raised, about the pressure that this could put on electronic transactions and banking. Umar, what can we do to help or to encourage banks now to invest more in technology so that we can have the capacity really to be able to contain the pressure that this could bring as a result of this new policy?
Yeah, it's a win-win situation. Banks are making a lot of money now from more transactions between two parties or multiple parties. So the more they now invest more in their technology with the backbone providers, internet service providers, the MTNs, Glos, and all that, so that because the more people transfer money, the more from those charges they take, they make more money. So it's an opportunity for them to expand the scope and their technology to incorporate all these things. Also note that apart from the apps that we have, banking apps that we have on high-tech phones, those other POS things actually can transfer money between POS to POS. There are other remittance systems that really, even for those that are, for the people that are low-income earners, let me use that word. For the low-income earners, there are things they can use, the POS machines, there are so many things, I'm not familiar with the names, that they can use to transact. So like I said, it's a nice policy, but like my brother here said, are judged to be politically motivated. So naturally there'll be resistance. So for every policy, it should be a long term to implement, not just within.
So the mobile money agents are not going to go jobless anyway, since there's still a role for them to play even in this. Do you think so?
Well, you see, the mobile money thing is an aberration in the cashless system. And it comes because of our behavior, our attitude as a people. We do not really yet trust the electronic system, even with small currencies. See, if you go to a normal place now, I know places in this country, you want to buy a 200 naira sachet of milk. Unless the boy has the money in his hands, he does not release that sachet of milk. So there is a deficiency of trust. And that needed to have been taken care of, so that people trust the system, get used to the system, know that they have tried it and it works.
Yes, but it's not like this policy says you cannot make any kind of transaction. It's just the amount is just the limit that it puts on the amount that you're going to withdraw in a day. So it means that if you are the type that do high volume transactions, it then requires for you to go, electronic. So is that a challenge still?
No, but look at it. The fact that the bulk of the people are not enlightened enough to engage in your transactions create a problem. Now, do you think that you could go to the market and come out all with transactions? In places where you see cashlessness working, even in Africa, market women, fish sellers, everybody, suya sellers are in it. And they went into it gradually without suspicion of being pushed into it. They saw the advantages. That's what the government is running away from by looking at the political benefits they want to see in the next few months and not opening up to let people get into it slowly. And there is no guarantee, I continue to say, that the technological backbone we have can take the mass of our people. We have 200 million people, probably 90 million are always in transactions. Have they confirmed that?
Okay, well, thank you so much. We have to go now because of our time. We thank you for coming on the program. Dr. Farouk Bibi Farouk, lecturer and political scientist, and also Umar Yakubu, Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. We look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. In case you have not missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube channel where we stream live 247. My name is Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.